On this episode of The Breakthrough Show, first up, we're chatting with an incredible speaker and podcast host, Terraine Brown. In our conversation, Terraine shares the experience he had in discovering the importance of personal development as you're looking for that perfect relationship in your life. Plus, we find out about his podcast, Behind the Shades. Then, we're sitting down with a project manager, Bisharah Saeed. As our first guest joining from India, Bisharah shares about the breakthroughs he experienced as he was in school and trying to figure out the answer to that age-old question, what do I want to be when I grow up? We also dive into the unique cultural differences that he experiences being from India and the expectations between parent and child. You don't want to miss this episode coming up today.
Life gives us moments when we have the opportunity to make a choice, and what we choose has the potential to change our lives forever. Join us now for another inspired episode of The Breakthrough. And now, please welcome the creator and host of the show, Jessica Dugas.
Welcome back to The Breakthrough Show. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and I'm super excited to be with you for another episode today. We have an incredible show coming up for you. So coming up later on in the show, we are talking to our first ever guest from India. Bisharah Saeed is going to be here. He's an entrepreneur. He also has an engineering degree, a postgraduate degree. He does all of the things, but we're super excited to get into this conversation about different lessons learned at different stages of our lives. And I'm just so excited to have him here. Also, coming up first on the show, we have a new friend of the show that I'm just getting to know. Really excited about that. He is a speaker. He is also a podcast host. He's a finance manager. He's into fitness, boxer, and training. Listen, we have all the multi-passionate people on the show today, so we're really excited about that. Please welcome to the show for the first time, Terraine Brown. Welcome, Terraine.
Thank you so much for having me, Jessica. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. Well, we have a little bit of a tradition on the show that's surprise. I would love for you to start out by sharing with our audience something that's bringing you joy today.
Oh, yeah. So today I am an owner of a boxer bulldog, and we just came back from the vet and she has passed her physical. So that brings me extreme joy today.
I love that. I love that. Have you had many pets throughout your life, or is this a new experience for you?
Well, I used to own fish, but I don't think fish can definitely compare to having a dog. And for the dog lovers out there, they don't compare to having children, but it's definitely a close second. So yeah. I've been blessed so far.
Absolutely. Well, it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun for you, and something that you probably had to prepare in order to have a new pet in your life, for sure. And so I know that it's the same when it comes to our relationships. And I know that's something you're really passionate about talking about is relationships, but specifically, how important is it, Terraine, for us to be working on ourselves before we get into a relationship, and then as we go into it as well?
Well, Jessica, that's a great question. I always compare relationships to a job applicant. You wouldn't want to go apply for a job without knowing a little bit about the role, about the company, the benefits. Is it a fit for you? Mm-hmm. And I'm 32 years old now. I spent the majority of my 20s just understanding that point. A quick example would have been, I always felt I was attracted to the wrong woman. But then I made a decision in my life and say, I want to improve, not only to be a better man, but to be a better partner. Eventually, when I get out there. So I started asking the type of women, what type of man would you want to bring home to your parents? What type of man would you want to keep you warm at night? So throughout those questions and my experiences and the answers that they gave back, I was able to grow into the type of man that the woman that I wanted in my life. So my personal growth was a lot of self-reflection. There was a lot of understanding. And most importantly, I had to put my pride to the side and say, yes, I am the prize, but I'm not the prize for someone today. Maybe tomorrow I can be that prize. surprised.
That this is like earth shattering here, because I have never heard anybody say, I just asked my ideal person what they want and then worked on myself to get to that place. This is like mind blowing, but it seems like why don't people do this? Why isn't this? Do you think that people are just, happy the way they are and they don't want to change for anybody kind of thing? Or what do you think it is that holds people back from asking that question?
Sometimes I think we think we're born perfect. We have no flaws. Children are innocent, right? So we just grow up thinking that. And I don't know if you have children, Jessica, but you may remember you have six.
I have six.
So you taught, that's big family. Congratulations to you and your husband. As you may remember, you taught your children how to speak, how to form their words, how to communicate, how to say that they're hungry. I need my diaper change. I want to go for this type of food. But at no point did we ever teach each other how to communicate, how to listen to what the person needs. And I think sometimes it takes a significant act of being humble to say that if Jessica's the type of woman that I want to be with, how can I make her as happy as she will make me if I don't understand what she wants? And that puts the onus back on us. And unfortunately, there's many of us who fear accountability. There's many of us who fear responsibility. We have this, you take me as is mentality, but many of us are damaged. I'm pretty sure when you met your husband and you two got to the point where you are today, you had to understand each other to become married and to have these wonderful children, this wonderful family. So I think we don't take it upon ourselves to understand what the other person wants. We just tell them, this is how I am. You should accept me. And if you don't accept me, someone else will. But sooner than later, there will be no more suitors. And then eventually the change is not going to be voluntarily. It's going to be forced.
Nobody likes that. We don't like that. I don't think most humans I know don't like to be forced into things. And it makes for, I think, a painful experience. So it's one thing to, work on yourself before getting into a relationship, but say you're in a relationship and this has occurred to you that you really need to connect with your partner. You don't really know what they like. They don't know what you like. And is there anything that can be done at that point, in your opinion, or do you just scrap it and start over?
No, human beings are beautiful creatures. We can adapt. We put people on the moon. Yeah. So if we can do something like that, we can understand the needs and the wants and the desires of the person that we want to call our own. It's not cliche to say to become one, because you literally you beat to that person's heartbeat. You want to understand what brings them happiness. And you could be 6 months into it, you could be past the honeymoon phase, you can be 5 years into it where you two are not even closing the door when you use the washroom anymore. You're that comfortable with each other. And I think it just comes down to asking, because as we get older, sometimes we lose sight of what connected us in the early stages of the courting, of the first year, of the second year. When you're 10 years in, you may know the person, but that person who you fell in love with 10 years ago may be a different man or woman now.
That's a great point, and something that we've talked about on the show before is, especially those of us who are super, focused on our personal development and trying to improve ourselves and be a better person the next day. I know that I am a very different person than the person that married my husband, and the same for him as well. He's a very different person too. And so I feel like it's this constant choice to continue to check in and ask ourselves, okay, who is this person today? And if we're not sure, to ask them, like, do you have is there any new needs I need to know about? Is there anything going on? Like, is there anything I'm not seeing maybe? And to keep that conversation going. If someone is looking to get into a relationship, and like when you went through this process of going to your ideal person, did you just like randomly ask people, or what should people do to get that ball rolling, to find out what people are looking for?
Well, I'm an extrovert, so I went to people I knew and people I didn't know. It's a different world now because now we're not as comfortable with strange people approaching us. But I would ask if I were to see someone, a young lady walking down the street, I was just ask, "Hey, my name is Terraine. I just have a few questions for you. What's your ideal person?" And then they'll communicate it. But what I did was, or my recommendation would be, ask your friends. But ask the friends that you can see in a serious relationship because you've probably been through, Jessica. I have friends that I'm surprised that men would date them, to be honest. And I see
You
you're
know who
laughing
you
and
are.
you're hiding
You know
it.
who you are.
Exactly. You know who you are. And then there are those who you're surprised that they don't have a relationship. So I tend to work from the hierarchy. I ask those who are married.
Mm.
I ask the married women, I ask the married men, ask those who identify as non-binary. When you and your partner got together, how was that initial experience? And what I found was many of them said that initially they weren't necessarily the type of man or woman that they usually date, but the person grew in to the type of person they eventually dated. So I think many of us do it subconsciously. We
Mm.
just don't go out there and actually ask. But I think we need to do more of that. I think it goes back to learning to talk versus learning to communicate. We need to start asking because as a woman, you know what you want in a partner. I have no idea because I'm not living your life through your perspective.
Right.
I know what I want as a man. So if you're going to ask me, we need that conversation. And I think that has been lost, unfortunately. And the dating market is what it is.
Right, right. I know we have Mr. and Mrs. Jackson that do a show on our network called Divine DNA, and they talk about relationships. And they did a topic a couple weeks ago it was, are you marriage material? And one of the things that I hear you saying that I think ties in beautifully to some of what the Jacksons were talking about, which is it seems like in order to be ready for a relationship or before going to a relationship, we need to be adaptable. Is that a word that you could see being something necessary for someone wanting to get into a relationship?
I would say I agree with that 100%. If you line yourself up with five, let's say I take myself, I lined up five women, that's five different personality types, that's five different experiences, that's five different lives lived. So I have to be adaptable, not to the point where this is like an episode of The Bachelorette, or The Bachelor, right? Where you're just picking and you're just, okay, she looks pretty. I always wanted to date a blonde. The brunette's kind of, it's a
Yeah.
little bit more than that. So you want to understand what is going on, and you yourself have to be able to adapt because the way you're living your life as a single man, as a single woman, cannot be the same when you have someone who now you're living for because you coming home and not letting him or her know impacts her. Every action you do impacts them. When you stay out too late, when you're drunk, when you're doing this, when you're doing that, it all impacts. So you have to adapt not only what you're doing, but you also have to adapt your mentality. And I think more importantly, emotionally, especially for men, men have to adapt emotionally because you're going to be providing or giving signals in ways that maybe you didn't understand before. And women are very good at picking up on that.
Mm. I wish I could nominate you for some of these relationship shows that I watch where I just, have you ever seen the show Married at First Sight, Terraine?
I have. It was actually recommended to me, oddly enough, and I started watching it, and I realized why the person recommended it to me.
Right? I take so much away from that show of what not to do. What not to do. And like you're talking about though, like, people just go into things and they think, I think they want to continue to live the single life and have the single mindset and do the single things and then go into the relationship and think, I'm just going to do all of that, but just somebody will be next to me and do it with me. And I mean, how messed up is that to think that that's the way that it's going to go?
Yeah, it's like the person who gets into a relationship just so they have a travel partner. Yeah. So, it's more than just having a warm body beside you at night or
Right.
someone you can take selfies with. It's a lot more than that.
I mean, my husband, no, I love you, honey. I'll just leave that out. Well, this has been really informational for people. I know we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and talk to Bisharah and more with Terraine. At the end of the show, we're going to find out what he's been up to, where you can find him. And I know you see his background, where you can listen to his podcast as well. So we'll be right back for more of the Breakthrough Show in just a moment.
Breakthroughs are about more than you might think. They're about discovering who you are, digging deep, reaching to the core of your soul. They're about healing. Healing yourself, understanding your beliefs, creating a ripple effect. And it's not just those initial moments that matter. It's about using them to bring more joy into our own lives and the lives of others. It's about having fun, letting loose, enjoying every moment life has to offer. It's about finding a safe space. It's about creating connection. Join us each and every month for exclusive programming, where we invite you to go beyond the breakthrough. So we ask you, are you ready? We'll see you online at thebreakthroughshow.com.
Welcome back to the Breakthrough Show. You know, before I have people come on the show, we do an initial call, and some people will do the call and then we end up recording the next week. But my guest today, I've actually been a little bit sad that we haven't talked in between because it's been so long and we had such great conversation in our initial call. He's very multi-passionate like I am about a lot of different things. He is our first guest that is coming to us live on the show all the way from India. We've had people on the show before of Indian descent, but this is the first one tuning in on the recording from India. Really excited about that. He has a degree in automobile engineering and he has a postgraduate degree in operations management. He does a lot of different things, currently working with a startup that we're going to learn a little bit about as well. So we're going to talk about all the things today, and I'm really excited. Please welcome my special guest today, Bisharah Saeed. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jessica, for having me on your show.
I'm so excited that you're here. And I would love for you to start out by sharing with our audience today something that's bringing you joy.
Something that brings me joy. Now, let me think. Actually, I can't even focus that on something really special. For me, every day when I get up, I try to focus on something that brings me joy. And to this day, I think this show is what is bringing me joy, because when I said earlier, the people who are listening won't be able to understand because we weren't recording earlier. So this is my first podcast, and I was really excited about that. I have been really excited about this for months and months. It feels like it's almost been a year since we last talked. So I think to this day, this podcast, this show, this being in this session with you is something that brings me joy.
And that's all. We're done now. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It means a lot that I can create a space where people feel comfortable and that it's a joy to be on. So that means a lot to me. And that brings me joy. Look what we just did there. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's so good. Well, as I mentioned, you've had you've done a lot of different things and you're young. Do you want to tell the people how old you are?
Well, I'm about this. Today is January 25th, so I am 6 days away from being 27.
Oh, see, you're an Aquarius too.
Yep, I am.
I'm an Aquarius. My birthday's in 2 weeks.
Wow, see, we are already getting along.
I
This was
know.
specially.
You see, this is why we don't have problems communicating either, because we're the same in a lot of different ways.
Probably why the pre-recording session went so well.
Yes. Yeah. Same minds. A lot of that Aquarian goodness going on. Aquarius is the best sign, but that's another show. So we'll talk about that another time. But like I mentioned, you've been into a lot of different things. You have a bachelor's in automobile engineering. You have a postgraduate degree in operations management. So what inspired you to get into to those lines of work? Let's start there.
Well, for as long as I can remember, I have been really fascinated about cars. Like certain brands. So yeah, obviously, when you're young, you don't focus on brands that much. It's about those four wheels going on the road. And whenever I just sit next to my father in the car, I always focus my eyes on the pedals.
Hmm.
How is he using his legs to drive it forward? And I used to ask him questions like, why do you have to shift the gear, or why do you have to turn the steering wheel this much or that much? So that's how it always started. And then like I started to bug my father to buy me toys of cars, as a 3 year or 4 year old. That's how you normally start in those days. And as I like I grew older. When I meant older, as I moved forward, I kind of knew that cars always fascinated me, but it also made me happy as well. So I decided that this is what I'm going to study,
Hmm.
and that's how this whole automobile engineering thing started.
Hmm.
And after the degree, then it was all about YouTube, because on top of like simply watching cars go on the road, I was more interested in learning about how these cars were made, like what makes them go forward. Like like some cars go faster, but some don't. So what is the difference? These questions started coming into my mind, and then I switched to YouTube, watching videos of how cars were made, how they moved in the production line, assembly line management. Those kind of terms came into my mind, and that's when I decided, okay, if I need to go in that direction, this is what I should pursue right now.
Hmm.
So that's how the story of operations management came into play.
Interesting. It's funny because I have a couple of friends who, when we were little, they were really interested in cars as well, and they became race car drivers.
Wow. I don't think
Could you
my
picture yourself doing that?
well, actually, I drove a few go karts. Nothing to boast about, but some people have some inborn talent in them. For example, like Lewis Hamilton, for example, the one of the best examples that we can take. He started all of that at age 5 or 6, I think, or at
Hmm.
age 5 or 6, he won his first championship. So for me, racing cars, of course, I love racing cars, but it's not something that I would choose for a career. For a career, I would rather be somewhere else, and I would do that for more of a hobby.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
I
I
mean, it
actually,
makes sense. It might be like a different, you do different things in different times of life, because now one of my friends that was doing that, now he has children. His wife just had a baby, and he doesn't want to travel as much anymore. And it's a different lifestyle now that he has his family. So I can see how it could be one of those careers that maybe isn't as long lasting as being on the engineering. So you were smart. You were smart to go that, that road.
and even if I had the opportunity, I don't think my parents would have let me do that because of the risk that is involved. And unfortunately, what I did was I showed some of those car crashes to my mother, which led to the situation. Okay, fine, you
Hmm.
you do what you want, but I shouldn't see you on those tracks.
Yeah. Yeah.
That that is the kind of direction that went in. And to be honest, I always allow keeping my family like tension free or free from anxiety. And if it's something that would put them in a compromising position, then obviously I don't think I would do that.
Mm, I love that. I love that. Well, I know I want to backtrack just a little bit, because one of the things that I know that is something that we go through as we're growing up and trying to figure out what we want to do is realizing that we're not accepted by some people and that we don't fit into certain groups. Tell us a little bit about what that experience was like for you growing up of trying to figure out where you fit in.
Yeah. So I've had multiple instances of this sort, like both from family or relatives as well as friends. But I'm going to focus that part on friends because I think I can explain it a little bit more from that perspective.
Mhm.
So when I was studying in the ninth grade, like it was a school just about 10 kilometers from where I live. I got to meet a lot of new people, and to be honest, I was really impressed by the company that I was in. But what I didn't realize was that I was trying too hard to fit into their company so as
Mm.
to become like accepted by these group of people who the whole school or the whole class thought were special. So I was like compromising a lot from my side. I was willing to act like a fool in front of them. But what I didn't realize was I was actually compromising myself in order to, just to act smart in front of some other people. And that went on for a while until I realized that this is not something that's working for me. And the whole plan actually backfired. I got harassed a lot. I got made fun of by the very same people. And on top of that, I wasn't really a good student from my ninth grade to the 12th grade.
Mm.
So I don't know how it is in the over there, but over here, if you are not a good student, you get harassed by teachers, mocked by your own friends or some other people in the class. You get
Mm.
thrown out of the class, and you slowly start falling into this category of what could be labeled as good for nothing.
Mm.
So that's when I realized that what I am never going to do this anymore. I realize that where I am, I know that I have a certain standard. I'm just going to maintain that. The people who don't want you in their group, you have the same. It's exactly the same from your perspective as well. Why would you need to be in a group of people who don't want you? I mean,
Right.
it's just a bad time. It was a bad time, but I am happy that I got over it, because if I hadn't changed or if I hadn't had that experience back in the day, maybe to this very day, I would have kept doing the same thing as well.
Mm. Yeah, I mean it's growing up can be a really a really challenging experience as because we're trying to figure out who we are, right? And then you have all of the things that come into play with adolescence of needing to feel heard, needing to feel accepted, and all of that. And I know from what I can tell, because I've only ever lived in the United States, I can't. It's hard for us, I think, being in such very different places in the world, to grasp the other one's culture unless we've lived it. But from what I can tell, the whole thing about education that you're talking about is much more of a strict experience in your culture, whereas here it's kind of like, if you're not doing well, it doesn't make a name for you, if that makes sense. It doesn't follow you forever, I don't think. I feel like here in the United States, if you don't do well in class. But I think you're right in that the things that you go through at that time definitely set you up for what's possible later on in your life and in your career. And it blows my mind that how old were you when you kind of figured out this isn't the path that I want to go down? How old were you then?
I was about 15 years old,
In
and it started at 15 years, but I figured it out like maybe when I was like 17 or 18
mm,
ish. It took a while because I studied in four different schools, first of all. So um, the kind of people that I came in contact with was varying from school to school. So there was
mm,
no consistency in the from that point of view.
mm,
So as I was coming in contact with different people, different friends, different students, it was kind of hard to figure where to actually pinpoint. And once I figured out that this is not where I want to be, or these are not the people with whom I want to be associated for the rest of my life, I said, that's it. So that's when I realized that you should never ever compromise yourself for someone else, especially when you don't know what's going to come from that very person. For example, if it's for a friend, that he's a friend for my life, this guy will what do you call stick out his head for saving me. If you
Right.
have that kind of a relationship, fine, it's okay. But seeing someone like for the first time and already establishing that you are like a BFF kind of relationship,
Yeah.
that's that's not very practical at all. And unfortunately, I made those mistakes. Like it wasn't just once. It happened multiple times. But now I am in a position where, you know what, we are going to draw a line over here. I'm
Mm.
going to stay beyond this line. You are going to stay like on the other side. We are going to have this relationship like a casual relationship. And if you prove that you are worthy enough to be on this side, you can. If for just one instance, or even if for a 1 second you go behind my back, or you do something that will like hurt my friends that are closest to my heart, you will stay beyond that line forever. And
Mm.
I won't ever see you as the same person ever again.
Yeah. It blows my mind though that you learned that so early on because listen, I'm going to be 40 coming up here soon at the time of recording this. But there's people that are my age that have not gotten to the point where they can create those boundaries for themselves and say this is what's acceptable in a relationship, whatever kind of relationship we're talking about, and this is what's not, and this is what's important to me, and this is what's not, and to draw that line in the sand, like you said, of being clear about what you want for your life and what your boundaries are. That we're some of us are still trying to figure that out. So I think that's huge that you learned that so early on, and it definitely helped you. As we're talking about culture, one of the other things that I recognize, I have a friend that lives in India, and the relationship between you and your parents is something that is very sacred over there. And it's not to say that that doesn't happen here in the States, but it's very different. It's extremely different. There's a level of respect that I've seen with cultures in India, particularly, where it's such a beautiful thing to see that relationship happen between the children and the parents. But I imagine that that also must come with a lot of pressure. Does it ever feel like that to you, that there's a lot of pressure with that kind of very close, respectful relationship with your parents?
That's first of all, you're very correct or very true to like what you just said about the relationship that we have with our parents. The thing is like how I see it. My parents brought me up right when I was a baby to like till now, because I still live in my own house. I haven't moved out.
Hmm.
I still live in the very same house that my father spent so hard building this up. And because of that, obviously, yes, we do have a close relationship with our parents, our siblings. But that doesn't mean that I am going to tailor all of my decisions based on their interests. That's where we draw the line, because at a certain point in life, I believe that you can convince your parents in a much better way than they can convince you. For example, let's take an example. We both of us know that I went for a degree in automobile engineering.
Hmm.
Why? Because I told my parents, like, this is where I want to be. But if my parents said that, your father did civil engineering, why don't you go for that? I said, I'm not interested in civil engineering. It has a lot to do with these buildings, drawings, and I asked my father, what is your job? What do you exactly go to the office and do? So he said, I need to make some papers ready. So why do you have to make the papers ready? Because I have to go to the site and see if things are working. And this is not something that works for me. And I drew my boundary right there. This
Mm.
was even before I joined college. So in that case, this is the kind of relationship that I have with my parents.
Mm.
My parents have always supported me right from the beginning. If you want to go for this, do it. If you want to go for this, do it. If you don't want to go for either of these, fine. but you should have a plan in your mind. That is what my mother and my father have always told me. Wherever you are, just work hard, be committed, and wherever you work, doesn't matter wherever you work, be smart in that area, and that's how you can build a reputation and come to the top. Although at the same time, I have to say, the relationships can go out of hand. Like some people might find themselves in a position where they are bound to obey their parents because they have been brought up in like a particular situation where the parents always have a strong arm over your head. We
Mm-hmm.
are going to say this, you are not going to go above that. When it comes to that sort of a relationship, and when you are at my age, things are going to get a bit more complicated,
Right.
which is definitely not the relationship that we have. Like either of us, I have an elder brother and sister.
Mm-hmm.
All three of us have very casual relationships, and we see our parents as friends and not
Mm-hmm.
someone who always strong arms us into a decision just so they think it should be made that way.
That's beautiful. And I love how it kind of came back to that conversation about boundaries as well, because from what I've seen and just from my friend that I know that's over there and also what I see on TV, it was hard for me to look in at some of their situations, and every situation is different, right? But it's hard for me to look into that. And there was a lot of things that I've seen where the person felt there was a lot of pressure from their parents to be a certain thing, and they couldn't bring themselves to say, this is what that's not what I want though. And so they ended up going into something that is what their parents wanted, and now they're having to live and have this career that means nothing to them. It's difficult to watch that.
You know, um, I always tell my friends, and it's not just my friends, my colleagues as well. Never do something because your parents wanted you to do it, because your parents are already at a stage where they have accomplished everything in their life, and now they're depending on you. So if you go for something that they suggested you to go for, and like maybe a couple of years down the lane, you're just saying that you don't want to do this anymore. So by that time, it's going to be really hard. It's going to be really hard to convince your parents why you don't want to do this anymore. You're going to have to transition into a different career, which is even more difficult. It's not impossible, I know that, but it's a lot more difficult. So rather than create these situations a couple of years down the lane, why don't you make that decision now? Just say that this is not what I want. Like I know, like you said, Jessica, every situation is different, and sometimes the pressure that you
Mm.
handle might want you to like postpone that decision because you don't want to upset your family. That might turn into something serious. There are a lot of people who face this situation. It's not just about the people in India; it's about all over the world. But I always believe that if you have to make a decision like right now, even if it results in some consequences, if those consequences are like much more like something that you can handle than the consequences
Mm-hmm.
that are going to come a couple of years down the lane, do it, because something is
Mm-hmm.
better than nothing, always. So I think
I love that. So
this is what something that
I'm gonna just have you come talk to my teen. Can you come to my house and talk to my teenagers about some of this?
well, I don't, I don't mind, but I'm not really sure of whether I'm qualified for like giving a teenager some kind of career advice, because there are like,
You are though. You are. Let me just give you some of this stuff is so good. And parents we can tell our kids all the things, but because we're the parents, that doesn't mean that they're gonna sometimes it's like, oh, you're just the mom, you're gonna kind of blow it off a little bit. But so sometimes it's helpful. I think you could do that for people. I'm just
I'm really happy that you told me that, because I haven't yet, like I haven't imagined myself in such a situation. The kind of experiences that I had back in school. If you looked at my grades, of course they sucked. And if I were to relate the person that I was back in those days, um, I wouldn't even have a college degree right now,
Mm,
because you know when your grades are not that good in school, you automatically receive a tattoo on the back saying that this is how you will be in future.
Right.
So for me, hearing all of this means a lot to me. It's like receiving a Nobel Prize.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. I should give one out. I should make like the breakthrough show Nobel Prize or something. We'll figure that out. We'll figure that out later. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. You've shared so many things that I think many people can take to heart and apply in their own lives. And even we have a lot of parents that watch the show. I feel like there's a lot to take away from this that people can be talking to their teenagers about. It's that time I'm telling you, we're going to have you come into our homes and talk to the kids.
Well, that is the best thing that you have said to me so far in this session, and I would really love to do that. Although I'm not really sure about this particular time because for obvious reasons, but maybe sometime in the future we can make things
Yes.
happen.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this has been wonderful. I would encourage everyone to check out the show notes and click all of the places where you can find out more about Dweebs Global and, of course, connect with our fabulous guest today. Thank you so much for being here, my friend.
Thank you so much, Jessica. It was a pleasure.
All right, we'll be back in just a minute for more of the Breakthrough Show. Welcome back to the Breakthrough Show. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and I'm back now with Terraine Brown, who is here. He's multi-passionate. He's into lots of different things. We're not surprised on today's show with our guest lineup as they have been. So I want to hear a little bit about your podcast. Tell me about it, the name of it, where we can listen, and what it's all about.
Absolutely. So my podcast is Behind the Shades. And for those who are viewing, I have the background in front of me. Sorry, behind me, I should say. And it's basically a podcast about the journey of everyone, you and I, taking your experiences, especially from childhood, and seeing how it has shaped your perspective as an adult in the world. And I share stories across the globe from people who were assaulted as a child to people who had broken relations with their parents, reuniting couples as well. So it's a beautiful experience for me and definitely a journey seeing so many people come together. And you can find me on anchor.com/behind the shades. You can find me on facebook.com behind the shades, as well as you can find me on YouTube behind the shades as well. So those are the three areas that I'm primarily on at the moment.
Awesome. So is Behind the Shades, are we talking about like shades on a window or shades like sunglasses? Which shades are we talking about?
So it'll be shades on sunglasses, because what I want to do is I want to have something, because I love shades, by the way. And
we should have worn them today.
We should have. But I want to give a perspective on basically how the shades is like a shield. And you want to look into the person's eyes to understand them. So what is the person behind the shades meaning, or behind their mask? So in a way is, how is Jessica when the lights are off when the lights are off and she's not recording? How is Terraine when the right light is off and he's not recording? Is Denzel Washington really that cool? Is Ryan Reynolds really that funny? You want to get to know them. And then when you shorten it into an acronym, it's BTS, as in behind the scenes, getting to know the person. So that's how I came up with the name for that.
I love it though. And it's such a great idea. It's so true. You just really never know how someone's going to be. And that's why I know we talked about initially, Terraine was so amazing to come on and do the recording for the show today, even though we had not had a prior conversation. And the reason that I like to have those prior conversations usually is because sometimes you just don't know. Like a person could make great, posts on social media and be a completely different vibe when you go to talk to them, and sometimes you just don't know those things. And I love that we can kind of dig in to that a little bit through your show. How did you get into doing the show? I know you're doing speaking, but you're also into a lot of other things. So how did that tie into the other things that you do?
Well, what I wanted to do is I want to give a voice to everyone's story. So how that tied in was that I felt I was always able to speak in front of an audience without feeling nervous. And that goes back to in my 20s, I used to give Bible talks. I used to read stories from the Bible to people and things like that in front of the congregation. So if you can do that in front of a lot of churchgoers, who know the Bible in and out, if you stand in front of them and talk about something that they're very passionate about, you can stand in front of anyone. And that's how it started from there. And similar to what you're doing is I used to have my friends share their stories with me, but they're afraid to speak about it. So sometimes I'd use it as an example, and I wanted to be that person that gave a voice to those whose voice isn't loud enough or whose voice goes unheard. So that's how it started, and how it ties into everything else is I just want to be an active person and helping out as much as possible, from my physical training, from the boxing to my current job in the finance industry. I just wanted to make my mark because I feel that my legacy is going to be through those I've reached, and hopefully I can continue to live on through them when I'm long gone.
I love that. I think that's something that's been, sort of in the back of my mind as I've completed these shows and everything as well. Just to be able to have something to carry on that people can find one day. And I say that all the time to people that are on the show. When you go to speak, it needs to be something that whether someone listens to it 10 minutes from now or 10 years from now, that it's still going to have an effect on their lives in a positive way. I'm going to ask you a question that I hate when people ask me, because I want to put you on the spot as well. Have you had a favorite show so far?
Yes, and it's actually I'm about to release it. It's about someone that she had sexual abuse trauma as a child within her family, and the way she coped by staying in school as long as possible, because when she was in school, she was on campus and she was away from those who were impacting her in that manner. Um, when I did it, oddly enough, it wasn't my favorite episode, but looking back on it and as I'm editing it, it's becoming my favorite episode. And that's the reason why it truly shows how you can have a young lady who felt like she was an ugly duckling in her family because she was the least attractive, to use her terminology, to become someone who's the most accomplished academically is truly amazing. So that's right now is my favorite episode so far, but I'm pretty sure she'll get dethroned one day.
I mean, I feel so fortunate sometimes being over a show like this, and I'm curious if you feel the same too. We have, these conversations like this where we record it and then we get to go listen to it again when we edit it, and then sometimes we listen to it again when it premieres or it comes out, and I take something new away every time. And so selfishly, I'm sitting here going, well, if nobody else gets anything from this, I certainly am. Or do you feel that way as well?
I do. I listen to every episode I air, and you're right. You take something new. Your state of mind today, let's say on a Wednesday, I'm thinking about being on your show. So when I go back to this episode, I can just imagine what that person is feeling me interviewing them, because now I'm on the other side.
Right.
Friday, when I get paid, I can go watch one about someone who's talking about money. So I feel like I'm rich, even though I'm probably not.
Yeah.
So we take something different each day. And I think our mood and what we need, sometimes we pull from an episode what we need at that moment in time.
Right. Right. 100%. I agree with you. So we've told everybody that they can find Behind the Shades on Anchor. Where else can people find you, Terraine, on social and websites or anything like that?
Yeah, so Anchor, you can find me Facebook and YouTube. Those are the three. Just type in Behind the Shades. I should come up. If you see this face, it is me. If you see something else, it may not be me, but well, I'll try to save you at that point.
And of course, we will have the links for you to be able to click at thebreakthroughshow.com. All you have to do is click on archive to find this episode. And you can also go to connections and find every single person that's ever been on the Breakthrough Show and be able to connect with them as well there. Terraine, thank you so much for being here today. It's been fabulous to meet you and have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Jessica. It's been a pleasure, and I've enjoyed our conversation today. It's a blessing.
Absolutely. All right, you guys, it's been another fantastic episode today. I want to thank Terraine Brown and also Bisharah Saeed. Thank you both for being here today. And thank all of you for watching or listening wherever you are in the world. And until next time, I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and I remind you to make every day a great day for a breakthrough. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Breakthrough. Please visit our website at www.thebreakthroughshow.com and be sure to join our After the Breakthrough community powered by Patreon. We look forward to seeing you next time.